Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the AM Report for HAPS News Network of Now. I'm Alex Mahajer. It is Thursday, March 18th, and this morning we're going to discuss the shooting in Georgia. 6 Asian American women dead, of 8 people total. And the killer, Robert Long. We're going to talk about his motivation. He's denying it was based on race. The cop who gave the press conference about it denied that it was based on race, and yet growing calls by Asian American groups across the country to investigate hate crimes, and real alarm in the community about the growing, alarming growth in hate crimes against that community. We're going to talk about this morning on the AM Report. Good morning, everyone. I'm Alex Mahajer. If you're watching on the HAPS app or website, click the award button. Let me know you're enjoying the broadcast, or say hello. There's a hello button. You can tell me what part of the country or world you're watching from. Love seeing you guys chime in from around the world. If you're watching on Facebook, Reddit, YouTube, Periscope, Twitter, wherever you may be watching, leave a comment. We can bat around with each other live on air. Good morning already to Jose from chiming in from the San Pedro ports. Good to see you this morning. And let me know how you're feeling as we navigate this discussion today about the growth in Asian American hate across the United States, especially in the wake of the coronavirus and the anti-Asian messaging that was propagated into the discourse by the former president. Hello from Riyadh. Wow, good to see you from Riyadh. Thank you so much for joining. I don't know what time it is for you, but thank you so much for watching this morning. So the gunman that was responsible for the shooting in Georgia has been charged with murder and assault. 21-year-old Robert Long, white young man, says that he has a sex addiction. He killed 8 people at 3 different massage parlors. It was a shooting rampage. 6 of them were Asian American women. He was charged, and he says he did not act from racial motivation, but that he has a sex addiction. Asian American communities are understandably outraged because it appears to be an obviously racially motivated incident. And there seems to be a reluctance by many to call it what it is, which is a hate crime. And Robert Long, part of the evidence that has been mounting about this, that has concerned AAPI groups and other allies and others who are interested in stopping this kind of violence, is that a believed Facebook page of Robert Long, who's the shooter, promoted racist messaging, including the use of the term China virus. And that account has now since been deleted. And that hasn't been confirmed, but it was floating around yesterday as being the apparent Facebook page of the shooter. And he's been charged with murder and assault. And so the way that the case has been handled by some in the media, but by the police in charge of handling this, has been problematic. The Georgia sheriff's captain, who gave the press conference about this, he's the spokesperson for the Cherokee County Sheriff's Department. His name's Jay Baker, Captain Jay Baker. He tried to convince the public that the shooter had just had a bad day. At a news conference, he said that he had not been fueled by anti-Asian racism. He had a bad day, was, quote, fed up, and was at the end of his rope, and this is what he did with that frustration. Captain Baker, though, is coming under increased scrutiny this morning because he himself has used anti-Asian racist messaging on his own Facebook page to promote anti-Asian merchandise. Here is a shot of the March 30th, 2020 post that he made on social media showing COVID-19 shirts, merchandise for sale. And really problematic anti-Asian messaging underneath saying imported virus from China. Even the captain's sheriff, who is so quick to defend this guy as just having a bad day, has promoted this sort of anti-Asian American messaging on his own social media pages, which really wild. AAPI groups are calling on the FBI to tackle Asian American hate crimes. As we know, 4,000 incidents of anti-Asian American racism in just the past year. A group called Stop AAPI Hate has been documenting these incidents in their database. Those numbers are going up according to a study done by the Center for the Study of Hate and Extremism at California State University. There were hate crimes against Asian Americans rose 150% in the last year, and in the NYPD is reporting 1,900% increase in Asian American hate crimes according to the NYPD. But this particular incident was just a guy who had a really bad day. And in the aftermath of the Capitol insurrection, the January 6th shooting at the January 6th attack on the Capitol, conducted by a conglomerate of groups of people, but really white supremacists, racists, xenophobes who were at that event. There's a societal, media, and systemic desire to not call these kinds of crimes what they are. If it's a Middle Eastern person, if it's a black person, people are very quick to call it terrorism or to call it murder, and to go after them to the full extent of the law. If it's crimes against Asian Americans or other groups by white people, it's not called white domestic terrorism the way that we saw happen at the January 6th insurrection. It's not called domestic terror or racism or a hate crime. It's just there's a reluctance to call it what it is, and we've got to start doing that. And that's really crucial. Asian American leaders are saying today that they are dismayed that discrimination and harassment continues to be downplayed, not just by the media and our society, but by federal and local police, like the captain in Georgia, saying this guy had a really, really bad day. Congresswoman Bee Nguyen talked about this incident, and she's a congresswoman from Georgia, and she said it very interestingly. She calls it the intersection of gender-based violence, misogyny, and xenophobia. She's the first Vietnamese American to serve in the Georgia House and a frequent advocate for women and communities of color. Let's hear from Bee Nguyen.
Absolutely. And this fear has been prevalent in the community in the last year since we've seen the spike of AAPI hate crimes. That number, 150% increase of those being reported, 68% of those victims are Asian women. And I think that, it has been overlooked nationally and in our state. But, last month we started to see the rise in violent crimes against our elderly folks on the West Coast. And now that it's hitting so close to home, there is a lot of fear in the community, not just because of the hate crimes that have happened over the last year, which are a result of xenophobic messaging around the pandemic by the former president. But, there's a lot of history of Asian American violence in this country, and many of our parents or grandparents or ancestors experienced that. It was the Chinese rail workers, the incarceration of Japanese Americans, the targeting of Muslim Americans after 9/11. So this is not new, but the fact that it is increased and it hits so close to home and that the crime is so violent and brutal, I think it's all hitting us.
Why do you think the hesitancy to call it a hate crime? I know we don't know the full story here, but I think we can all acknowledge that if a different group were targeted, multiple groups were targeted, even as we waited for more details, people would be calling this a hate crime. Why do you think the hesitancy?
Well, I think this country has a reluctance to admit that there is very real and deep-rooted systemic racism that does result in violence. In this particular case, where the victims were Asian women, we see the intersections of racism, xenophobia, and gender-based violence. We've also seen historically where news outlets and the police frame the story around the perpetrator. And now we're hearing about the suspect in custody, and we are hearing stories about how he was religious, how he suffers from a sex addiction. It's humanizing and centering him versus humanizing and centering the victims of the crime.
Thank you very much, Representative Nguyen. I appreciate your time. I'm glad to talk to you. I'm sorry it's under these circumstances.
So Bina Wen calling this the intersection of the exact words, intersection of gender-based violence, misogyny, and xenophobia. We need more funding for mental health in this country, says Renee Barone, and some people call racism a mental health issue. And I agree, independent of this, that we need funding for mental health, but certainly it couldn't hurt to try to tackle this from the core, at the base issue. Someone says the stream title is racist. Because, as you know, as making my point, I think you're complaining that I use the word white domestic terrorism, but you know, I think you're just kind of making my point by defending white domestic terrorists and calling me a racist. Tim David, my Filipino community is heartbroken. My heart goes out to you, Tim. It's devastating what's going on, and it needs to stop. I am of that mind. The amount of messages I've received from friends saying they're afraid has been heartbreaking, says Pablo de la Hoya. And yeah, from all accounts, this incident is not the first. It is just now the most public, and it's the second deadliest shoot. It's the deadliest shooting in 2 years in the United States, and it's alarming. It's alarming, and it's shining a light on what's been going on for not even just the past year since President Trump, former President Trump, was calling this the China virus, though that had a direct impact on an increase, a sharp increase in hate crimes. Asian American hate and distrust has been around for a long time, back to when there were Japanese internment camps, and even before that, during the gold rush. When Chinatown communities were terrorized by settlers seeking to find gold on the West Coast. West Coast, San Francisco, particularly New York, these are areas where there's a great deal of Asian American hate crimes. Investigators say race does not appear to be a motivator, says iHeartOg, and that is drawing a great deal of skepticism and criticism. The investigators aren't saying that. The police, Captain Baker, if you were watching a few minutes ago, we covered this, but Captain Baker, the police spokesperson for the Georgia Sheriff's Department that is handling this case, is under increased scrutiny because he himself has posted anti-Asian messaging on his own Facebook page, and he's protecting this guy, calling it a bad day, saying race isn't a factor. So Bina Wen, very, very important to hear from her. Racism, sexism, they've got to be considered in the Atlanta case involving these 6 Asian women and the 2 others. That's got to be considered as we look into this crime. And there are ways that you can help. How can we stop Asian American hate crimes? AAPI advocates are sharing 8 things that you can do to help stop this violence. Spread awareness on social media. Report hate crimes and harassment to the Stop AAPI Hate Reporting Center. That's going to be important, and you can look them up. AAPI hate does not mean to be against the race of the attacker, but it is important to shine a light on white domestic terrorism when it happens. Donates to community organizations. I am posting a link in the comments right now of a GoFundMe page that is accepting donations, and that will split your donation evenly across several community-based organizations, to multiple different community-based organizations that can help. Support your local Chinatown. Get out there and support Asian businesses. Challenge your own biases when thinking and talking about this, about your biases about Asian people and assuming they may be affluent, for instance, and that they may not be susceptible to racist attacks. Check in to see, speak up against harassment when you see it, and check in to see how your Asian friends are doing. All of these are ways the AAPI leaders are saying that you can help to curb this violence. That's all we've got for you this morning on the AM Report. I'm Alex Mohajer. If you like this journalism, if you like this content, please consider sponsoring it. You can do that at www.haps.tv/@Alex. We'll be back tomorrow morning with Rance Collins, editor-in-chief of 800 Democrat. Good to see you all this morning, and have a fantastic Thursday. Bye-bye.